Okay, core part, question number 15 from the chapter number 1, capital market expectation. Uh, इसके पहले there was some kind of a case study to that, but I thought कि it is not required. All the data is there in this case study that the country is some named Iceland, something like that, and it is expected to go through a decline phase. Okay, so economy is gonna go for decline. So, like, this is a trend line, and we are gonna be like declining. So, okay, projected cyclical decline in response to the projected cyclical decline. Okay, and in private sector borrowing, the borrowing is also gonna be lesser. So there are two things. One is economy is gonna decline. Overall recession, and because of that, the private sector is not going to borrow because private sector will borrow and invest if they believe that economy is going to be doing well. So if economy is declining, there is not much demand happening in the economy, then they won't borrow and invest. So private sector versus government sector. Government sector is going to be borrowing not for profit purpose, but in general for welfare purpose. But private sector will borrow for profit. So if the economy is declining, they will not borrow and invest because the returns would be lesser because people are not spending the money. Okay. All right. So he expect whatever, and it is this ease monetary policy, matlab, expansionary monetary policy, and at the same time, government is going to have a tax cut. That means again the fiscal deficit will increase, and again the expansionary fiscal policy. So both monetary policy was expansionary, and fiscal policy was expansionary. So because of the tax cut, the deficit is going to be higher, and for that government will have to borrow, and for that government is going to issue long-term securities, matlab government bonds, treasury bond we can say. Okay, discuss the relationship between, I mean, you want to know the shape of the yield curve. Okay, and this would be for around like so. Shape of the yield curve, like steeper, flatter, would be around 2 marks, and then for explanation around 3 marks. Okay, it will be around a 5 marks question. So I'll just pause the recording. You guys put the answer in the chat section. Till then, I'll just put the like check your answers. Okay, otherwise, I guess you guys had a time now, so you guys can put the answer right now. So, okay, I'll pause the recording till that I'll copy your answers. Okay, so out of all the answers that I got, I selected answer of Mitanshi because it was a small answer and answer of meat because it came first and it was a big answer. So ऊपर वाला आंसर है मीट वाला ये ऊपर करंदीप वाला जाने नीचे वाला. Okay, but before I see that answer, पहले concepts क्या था कि monetary policy is generally focusing on the short term rates. So the monetary policy is expansionary, मतलब they're increasing the money supply. The short-term rates are going to come down. ये वाला focus था, and that is also right because the concept was that the economy is going through a recession. People are not spending the money. So what you should do is you should basically reduce the interest rates so that people would save less and spend more. Or rather, even more than that, people will borrow at a lower interest rate and start spending the money. So lower interest rate will basically is going to boost the spending, and that's gonna help the companies to see some demand, and they will start spending the. I mean, they'll start investing the money. Okay, and that would increase the production. So that's the logic of keeping the lower interest rate. That if the money supplies increase, the supply will increase, so the interest rates will go down, and that would demotivate people to save. That will motivate people to consume, or that will motivate people to borrow and spend. So that will create a demand and that would increase the I mean that will motivate the companies to borrow and start producing the goods which will increase the production. So that was the logic of keeping the monetary supply expansion or keeping the interest rates lower. अब होगा क्या मतलब like how it is going to result. So if I simply look at the monetary policy, then what's going to happen? Slowly, the consumption will start increasing. Slowly, the companies will see more and more demand. Slowly, they will start producing. Slowly, for that they will start borrowing the money. So slowly, what's going to happen as they start borrowing the money? The RBI, I mean the central bank. You can use the word RBI, चलेगा कोई problem नहीं है, but try not to use it. But marks won't be cutting, marks won't get cut if you use the word RBI. So slowly, what they're gonna see that as the people have started spending the money, the inflation is gonna come into picture. And then to control the inflation, they will start increasing the interest rates. So as of now, the interest rates would be lower to motivate the consumption. But later on, over a period, the interest rates will start to increase. So that is what is called in the textbook as basically the only based on the monetary policy. If I don't get into the fiscal policy right now, if I look at the monetary policy just based on that, currently lower interest rate, but over a period, the interest rates will be short-term rates will be increased by the RBI as the companies will see that there is as people will start spending, as people will start creating a demand for the companies, and companies seeing that demand start producing, and for production they will require working capital loan, they will require term loans, so they will start borrowing the money. So as this is automatically having the interest rates because of that demand for loan will start to increase, and even RBI will see that there is a demand for loan, so they will start reducing the I mean जो money supply जो increase करे थे, so they will start like reducing that money supply. They will start increasing the interest rate because now the inflation will come into picture because people will start spending so much that the demand would be much more than the production. And to control the inflation, RBI will start increasing the interest rates. Okay, so based only on the monetary policy, also the answer was the yield curve is going to be steeper. क्या लिखना है मैं बताता हूँ, मैं अभी सिर्फ मैं कंसेप्ट एक्सप्लेन कर रहा हूँ. Is the concept clear? Based only on the monetary policy, how the yield curve would be steeper, currently lower interest rates, and later on because of the possibility of inflation, the RBI is going to increase the interest rate later on. So that's the reason the long-term rates are going to, the short-term rates are expected to increase over a period, and that's the reason the long-term rates are going to be higher. Reason if this concept was clear. कुछ डाउट है इस कंसेप्ट में तो पूछो, देन वी विल इवैल्यूएट द आंसर. मतलब आंसर इवैल्यूएशन बाद में, पहले कंसेप्ट इज क्लियर. ओके, Suhana has not joined. Okay, she had asked this question actually. Anyways, second was about fiscal policy. So obviously अभी क्या हो रहा है कि एक तो है कि people are not spending. So you are reducing the short term rate. I mean, RBI is reducing the central bank is reducing the short term rate, motivating them to save and motivating them to consume. तो ये हुआ demand side. But on the production side, the companies are not borrowing the money, right? So what government can do is government can either increase the G, government can start spending more. So as the government will start spending more, what's going to happen? The production will increase. Because private companies are not seeing the demand because there is no demand. So they are not seeing the demand, so they are not producing. So what government can do is government companies can start increasing the production. Now, obviously, there will be money required for that. For spending more, government will be requiring money. So for that, they'll be issuing the bond. So government, what they will do, they will issue the bond. Okay. From that, they will borrow the money, and then using that money, the government companies will start the production. That is what they were not doing in this case. They were not increasing the government spending. They were reducing the tax rate. So logic क्या था, by reducing the tax rates, one logic is that people will have more money now. Like individual tax rate will be lesser, so people will have to pay less tax, so they will have more money with them. So they will spend more. That will create a demand, and that will motivate the private companies to produce more. So that was one logic of tax rate getting cut down. And second logic is directly companies have to pay lesser tax, right? Corporate tax rate will be lesser. So companies will be able to have more profit after tax. So from that perspective, as the profit after tax will be more, the tax burden becomes lesser. So they will be able to have more profit after tax. So they will be able to retain more, and they will be able to invest more. कि अगर अगर मेरा टैक्स बर्डन कम है तो मेरा business is going to have more profit, so they will start investing more in the business. So and for that obviously as they start investing there will be more production happening. So that was the logic of tax rate getting cut. But इसका इन yield कर्व के साथ क्या कनेक्शन था? Basically यहाँ पे जो गवर्नमेंट बॉन्ड्स, जो गवर्नमेंट्स आर इशूइंग द बॉन्ड्स, so what's going to happen as the governments are issuing the bonds, governments are borrowing the money. And bond का क्या मतलब होता है? Can someone unmute and tell me like what is bond? Like maturity क्या होता है bond का?
The 100 face value 100.
नहीं वो जाने लो, maturity like मैंने गवर्नमेंट बिल नहीं बोला, मैंने गवर्नमेंट बॉन्ड बोला. तो बॉन्ड का मैच्योरिटी क्या
Principal plus interest.
5 years, 7
मैच्योरिटी है?
years, 10
लॉन्ग
years.
टर्म, लॉन्ग टर्म. द बॉन्ड इज अ
10
लॉन्ग.
years or more.
Government is when issuing or government is borrowing a long term money, obviously the long term interest rates will start to increase. That will again like emphasize our point that a yield curve is going to steeper. So I would frame the answer like this, like एक तो आंसर था, मतलब 2 marks will be like if your return yield curve is going to steeper. So we'll check the Mitanshi's answer and Meet ka answer in a while, but one I will get 2 marks if I select, if I write it the yield curve is going to become steeper. Explanation. Okay, regarding the monetary policy, short-term rates, like you can say the money supply would be increased. Expansionary monetary policy लिया क्या लिखा है? Loose. So I would mention like this that a money supply would be increased and in short term, okay, but like monetary policy focused on short term. So money supply in the short term would be increased. So short term interest rates will go down. Now this emphasizes one point that so short term interest rates will go down. So yield curve is going to steeper. ये point आता है इससे. Second thing that I'll emphasize is that कि over a period, okay, I mean, so मुझे आगे लिखना पड़ेगा कि why short term rates are expected to increase over a period. So for that I need to like just write some points, although they may not actually are necessary, but still the examiner should know that I know. Short term rates being reduced. Okay, ये वाला जो point है कि short term rates will be reduced. So you have to write like this: the reduced short term rate will make people save less and consume more. या फिर वो मत मतलब वो भी लिख सकते हो कि will make people will motivate people to borrow and spend or make people save less and borrow more. I'm sorry, will make people save less and spend more. So as people will spend, ये सब लिखने की जरूरत नहीं है, मतलब डायरेक्टली मैंने this spending will create more demand. Simple, like put like this पूरा explanation करने के लिए try to write it in like short. This increased spending will create a demand which will motivate companies to produce more. Okay, so यहाँ पे now उसके आगे वाला पॉइंट इंपॉर्टेंट है. As this continues to happen, the demand will continue to increase and it could create an inflation in the longer term, and hence RBI will or central bank is expected to increase the short term rates over a period. This short term rate increasing over a period will lead to long term rates going up. Long term rates going up, yield curve steeper. ये explanation. Okay? And तीसरा explanation, I know second explanation was a little bit longer, but I don't have a choice, मुझे लिखना पड़ेगा. Okay, and third explanation कि as the government is going to reduce the tax rate, the budget deficit will increase, and for that they are borrowing, but उसके आगे क्या? They are borrowing using government bonds, which is long term. वही मैं मुर्तजा को बोला था, मुर्तजा ने बोला नहीं हो. Long term, बाद में 10 year बोला. Long term bond मतलब long term. So long term में the demand for loans will increase, and hence the long term interest rates will increase. Long-term interest rate increases means again yield curve will become steeper. So this is how I would try to frame my answers. Let me see how you guys have done that. Two of you have done that. So पहला वाला तो I think Karan बोला एक बार delete करता हूँ. Okay, as central bank would be easing monetary policy, the short-term rates will reduce. Okay, I'll give marks to it, 1 mark to it. आई वुड थोड़ा सा ऐड करूंगा इसमें से पॉइंट मतलब लिखने के लिए. मनी सप्लाई विल इंक्रीज एंड हिंस शॉर्ट टर्म रेट्स विल रिड्यूस. आई एम नॉट कटिंग मीट्स मार्क फॉर दिस. मीट समझा ना क्या लिखना था कि
You have not written this. You have
इन सब.
chosen someone else.
सॉरी,
I have not written this. You have chosen of someone else.
तो ये किसका आंसर है फिर येलो वाला?
Sir, it's fine.
अच्छा,
Karandeep.
करणदीप का आंसर. करणदीप क्लियर ना कि मनी सप्लाई विल इंक्रीज एंड हिंस इंटरेस्ट रेट्स विल शॉर्ट टर्म इंटरेस्ट विल कम डाउन. ये वाला
Yes,
पॉइंट
sir.
वुड हैव बीन बेटर टू राइट. नहीं लिखा, बट I'm not being a harsh examiner. I don't know why. I'm not being a harsh examiner today. So I'm not cutting the marks. Okay. But उसने आगे का नहीं लिखा पॉइंट कि what's going to happen with the short term rates later on. Okay, he's talking about the government वाला case, but he has not talked about the possibility कि
Sir,
this will.
sorry to interrupt, sir. Actually, I wrote ahead.
कहाँ पे?
आगे आगे लिखा है मैंने. Therefore, the shape of the yield curve will be
नहीं
upward
नहीं, वो समझा.
sloping in the
शॉर्ट टर्म रेट्स आर एक्सपेक्टेड टू इंक्रीज कहाँ पे लिखा है?
okay for long term.
दैट वन आई अंडरस्टैंड. ये गवर्नमेंट वाला वन समझा. मैं सेकंड मार्क्स इसका मार्क दे रहा हूँ. सेकंड मार्क में कट कर रहा हूँ बिकॉज यू आर नॉट मेंशन द पॉइंट दैट this increase spending from the consumers will create more demand and that will motivate the producers also to produce more. But this demand will keep on increasing, keep on increasing, keep on increasing, and it could outpace the supply, and that could create an inflation, and that for that RBI would try to increase. I mean, RBI is expected to increase the rates later on in the later phase of the economy. So that increase of the short-term rates in the later phase of the economy is going to lead to long-term rates being more. ये वाला पॉइंट तुमने नहीं लिखा, इसके लिए मैंने मार्क्स कट किया, समझा?
Yes, sir.
ये थर्ड पॉइंट आई एम जस्ट रीडिंग इट राइट नाउ कि सब्सटेंशियल टैक्स कट, ओके, गवर्नमेंट डेफिसिट विल बी फाइनेंस्ड बाय लॉन्ग टर्म, सो द लॉन्ग टर्म रेट्स विल राइज, बट व्हाई? बिकॉज के लॉन्ग टर्म में डिमांड फॉर मनी वुड बी हायर. Okay, but he's mentioned from that point. Supply will increase. Okay, he's using the logic कि अगर supply increase होता है तो price कम होता है, and price कम होता है तो yield increase होता है. Like anything which is more in supply, जिसका supply बढ़ता है, price कम होता है, and bonds and the interest rates are opposite. So price goes down, the interest rate goes up. Perfect logic, चलेगा. Also, there is that government will be also be able to pay its long term, will increase the yield for long term. Also, there is that government will be able to pay, will not be able to pay, I guess. Possibility that what if the government does not pay? That is called as term premium, by the way. Therefore, the shape of the yield curve will be upward sloping, lower for short term rates. Okay, fine. So he gets 2 out of 2, and he gets 2 out of 3. Or if I have to be strict, 1.5 out of 3. So he gets around 4 out of 5 marks. Clear, Karandi?
Yes, sir. Regarding the monetary policy that I forgot to
Increase
mention.
of short-term rates in the later phase of the economy to curb the inflation. ये point नहीं आया. Okay.
Okay.
Monetary policy expansionary. अच्छा, this Mitanshi answer. Mitanshi, unmute. Monetary policy expansionary, so short-term rates will be lower. Okay, but again the same point. Money supply would be increased. ये point लिखो कि money supply will be increased and hence short-term rate will be lower. But again, I don't know why. I'm not
Okay, I
becoming
was
strict here.
traveling, so
No problem, no problem,
I
no
was
problem.
just yeah.
Fiscal policy expansionary, so long-term rates would be higher, but logic नहीं mention किया. 0.5 marks for this. Okay, so what logic that he has mentioned over here? ये logic देख सकते हो या फिर जो मैंने logic बोला कि the government deficit will increase, so government will borrow more at a longer term end using the bonds. So this
Mhm.
increase of the demand, this increase for the demand for the loan will increase the long term interest rate. तो ये point आया नहीं. But conclusion उसने proper लिखा था कि fiscal policy expansion so long term rates will be higher, but explanation आया नहीं. But at least conclusion at test I'm giving 0.5 marks, and
Mhm.
this she will get it perfect. And for explanation, she gets 1.5. So she gets total of 3.5 out of 5. Anyone else has mentioned something that you want me to evaluate? Let me know.
Sir,
हाँ बोलो बोलो.
sir, can you review my answer because I think I missed some point. That's why I wanted to let it check by you.
क्या मतलब तूने क्या? अच्छा ठीक है. अलग अलग होना चाहिए मुझे था.
So
Otherwise,
can
there's
you
no point
review
of
mine?
let me check. Okay, let me check his answer. प्लीज गाइस, अगर अलग है, अगर तुम्हें समझा मैं किस किस क्या पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से एस्टिमेट कर रहा हूं, देन डोंट आस्क मी टू प्लीज इवैल्यूएट आंसर. अगर सिमिलर वेज पे लिखा है, बट लेट्स सी. दैट्स हिज आंसर. Shape of the yield curve would be upward sloping. Fine, he gets 2 out of 2 for that. Due to interest rate being lower in the short term. Okay, but he has he mentioned why interest rate is lower in the short term? Monetary policy expansionary, so, and interest will be higher in the long term. That is what is steeping. Okay, uh, as the economy will start improving. But इसके आगे I would expect him to write कि as the people will start consuming more and more, that could create an inflation, and hence that would lead to short-term rates being increased by RBI.
Okay. Okay.
To prevent economy from declining, central bank will reduce the interest rate, which will increase the perfect. Okay, so this is what I was expecting, and hence that will reduce the interest rates. But ये ऊपर लिखा उसने चलेगा. But ये यहाँ पे लिखा would have been better ये वाला point.
Okay.
Okay,
I
there
have
were
to write down.
boosting. Okay, चलेगा, spelling
Sorry,
mistake
I
है. Boost.
forgot the spelling.
नहीं चलेगा बूस्टिंग डिमांड प्रोडक्शन एंड सेल्स. एंड बट उसके आगे वाला पॉइंट, ये वाला पॉइंट का उसने एक्सप्रेशन नहीं दिया बाद में. could create a inflation. Okay, and second, government will increase the fiscal for deficit by reducing tax and spending more. हाँ, so that company can borrow more capital.
And that they can do a private company can borrow more funds to increase their production and sales.
Company can borrow more capital. If they want the company to borrow more capital,
So
what
indirectly they will boosting the economy, no, sir?
banks which will increase the production sales? ये नहीं है. This will lead to government borrowing more money, not companies. Government borrowing more money, and that is going to lead to the long-term interest rates increasing. ओके,
Okay.
बट ये वाला पॉइंट का लॉजिक क्या है मुझे समझा नहीं, मतलब ये पॉइंट तुमने क्या लॉजिक से मेंशन किया वो समझा नहीं, सो मतलब यील्ड का उसे कुछ कनेक्शन नहीं था।
So like private borrowing will be more because now the if the
अंडरस्टूड, बट सो लॉन्ग टर्म मेंशन नहीं है कहीं पे वर्ड, सो आई वुड कंसिडर दिस टू बी पुअरली रिटन। मतलब तुमने मेंशन करना कि लॉन्ग टर्म, मतलब ओके, इफ इवन इफ आई अज्यूम दिस पॉइंट, they are government is not asking, like not making sure that the companies will be able to borrow more capital. They are borrowing more capital because they are having fiscal deficit. Okay, so I will give 2 out of 2 because yield curve upward sloping लिखा है, and out of the explanation I will give 1.5, yeah, 3 point out of 5.
Sir,
ठीक है, I
can
guess it is
you
clear now. हाँ,
yes,
can
sir.
you review my answers?
sorry,
Can you review my answer once?
सबके आंसर करने में टाइम नहीं होगा यार, मतलब
I wrote it in with
okay,
different.
Darshan, the yield curve would be upward sloping. So, as current tax relief and relaxed monetary policy will lead to short-term rates fall, perfect short-term rates fall, but it has nothing to do with current tax relief, by the way. Tax relief का short-term rate के साथ कोई connection नहीं है, so that will cut the marks. But this fiscal relief will be financed by issuance of long-term bonds, which will increase supply of bonds, which will lead to increase perfect. ये वाला लॉजिक करेक्ट है, बट वो टैक्स रिलीफ का शॉर्ट टर्म रिस्क के साथ कोई कनेक्शन नहीं है। जस्ट कॉपी योर आंसर्स फॉर अदर्स। Okay, so short term rates will fall because of relaxed monetary policy, money supply will increase, ये वाला आ गया, बट टैक्स रिलीफ का कुछ कनेक्शन नहीं है शॉर्ट टर्म रेट्स के साथ। Okay, and fiscal relief will be financed by long-term bonds. Perfect. Increasing the supply leads to increase in long-term rates. Perfect. चलेगा. Just I wanted to mention कि demand for loans will increase in long term. 2 out of 2 for upward sloping and 2 out of 3 because again तुमने ये नहीं लिखा कि inflation could increase and hence RBI will increase the short-term rates in the future. All right, I guess it was easy question. मतलब out of 5 marks, it was easily possible to get like 2 तो obviously easy था, and out of the expression 3 में से 1 to 2 लाना easy था. So around 3 to 4 out of 5 was easily possible. I mean 3.5 out of 5 was easily gettable in this.